Hey everybody, it's Mark with MainWP, and today I have part two of the promised interview with Brian Rotsztein from Unicio. In the previous interview, we talked about SEO, and in this video, we are going to talk about his book. See if I can get this so it looks good. Does that look good? The Psychology of Pricing. Hey Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Tell me about the psychology of pricing. You wrote this book. As I recall, it was the result of WordCamp talk that you did that kind of prompted you to say, hey, maybe I should write a book about it.
Yeah, so at WordCamp Montreal 2019, I gave a talk about pricing and clients and which clients to choose and how to build some confidence. But it was just kind of like a one-off. I didn't think much of it. And after when I got off stage, there was like an enormous line of people like who wanted to talk to me about this. Before the book even, I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just make a little course about it. And I was asking people, would you attend a workshop, or if I made a course available online, would you watch it and so on? And everyone's like, yeah, yeah, for sure. So I thought, okay, this sounds like I'm onto something, there's a need for this. So I started creating a course, and then the pandemic happened and I paused the course, even though most people said, hey, I'm not working, I'm going to make a course. And so a lot of other people started making courses for freelancers, which included like pricing components and so forth. I was looking around, I didn't see anything that I thought was really the same kind of thing. Everybody who creates a course has their own angle, their own experience, they bring their own touch to it. And so I thought, you know what? I am going to take a part of the course that I never launched. I'm going to take like a module out of it. I'm going to refine it and I'm going to turn it into a book. So I'm sitting here for 6 months and I'm like typing away, I'm writing. And it started off as like 100 pages and 200 pages. And I was like, okay, like that's enough. That's enough. The book before that was on content marketing, like a full how to on how to do content marketing. And that one I thought, oh, I'll make it like 50 or 100 pages and ended up also being about 400 pages. And then this one, I was like, I'll never do that again. And this one, I just kept writing and writing and writing. So basically, this one was like three books in one. I put it out. I was exhausted after 6 months of writing. It's not just that. Like I designed the cover. I designed, like I wrote. I did put the whole thing together myself. So it's like a labor intensive process. And I said, you know what? Okay, well, maybe I'll market it. Maybe I won't. Whatever. We'll see. And then I just kind of let it go. And then I barely did anything for about a year. I think I appeared on one podcast that year. The idea was I was going to continue speaking at WordCamps all over the world, and I'll talk about this topic, and people will pick up on it, and then they'll just maybe buy the book or take an interest, and because I offer freelancer coaching as well, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll get some clients that way. And then after the pandemic, most of the WordCamps dried up for a while. So I kind of just let it go. And then I realized I started giving talks again. I gave one in like WordCamp Vancouver, WordCamp US, and each one brought on like a client. And every time I'd appear on a podcast, I started appearing on a few of them, I'd always see a boost in sales. And then people start messaging me saying, oh my God, I love your book. I learned so much, yada, yada. So I was like, okay, okay, so maybe there's something to this. So even though the book's like a couple years old now, maybe like 3 years officially, there's still great information in there. A lot of it's like evergreen, like timeless.
So, a couple of questions that popped into mind. When you're talking about the psychology of pricing, what do you mean by that?
There are many, many elements of psychology in the book, kind of from different angles. I actually have two master's degrees in psychology. So some of what I have in the book is like pulled from my experience in that area. And some of it's from based on business, basically running solopreneurship for like 25 years. I have a lot of experience. I've been burned many times. I've lost a fortune in money that I could have made and should have made, but didn't because I just didn't know what I was doing. And I basically ended up writing the book of giving advice that I would have wanted. And so a lot of that had psychological elements to it. One of them is the pricing mindset. So I have like a lot of chapters in the beginning about just changing your mindset about pricing because I think one of the mistakes that most, if not all, freelancers do, especially in the beginning, is that they assume that like the client's almost doing you a favor. It's kind of like, oh, they're gonna like actually pay me like $1,000 to do this. Oh my God, I better do everything I can to secure the contract and do the work. And now looking back, I'm like, no, 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 no. I have a service that you don't know how to do. I'm charging you $1,000, and this is going to be like a mutual agreement. Like you need help with something. I have a skill that you need. You will pay for that skill. And so getting into that kind of mindset is like the first kind of psychological like point that I make in the book. Be ready to charge because you're offering something of value. And that becomes sort of like a recurring theme like throughout the book. No matter what you think, you have something valuable. Somebody's coming to you for something because they want something from you. So if that's what's going to pay your rent, you better charge for it.
It's funny that you bring that up. I remember, gosh, I was probably like 20 or 21 years old. There was a book that somebody turned me on to, and it's a public domain book, and it's called The Science of Making Money, I think is the name of the book. It's interesting because you bring up that like, oh, they're doing us a favor by, bringing their business to us and letting, and letting us do this for them, right? It's a tremendous privilege, which it is. And it was something along the lines of the only way a transaction works is if you're both getting something of value.
Hmm.
And that changed my mindset to that of, hey, what I have is valuable to this person too. It's not just what they're bringing to me. And if there's a mutual respect in the exchange, then that's when a relationship builds. And so that changed my whole outlook on these things because I also felt like many do when you're young and trying to get into business, like, oh my goodness, I'm so lucky to have somebody want
Hmm.
to hire me to do this for them when there are so many other people out there. And once again, it's not that you're not grateful for it, but you are providing a very valuable service to them. This gets into the psychology of attracting the right kind of customer as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a big piece of the book and a big piece of a lot of my talks recently have been about going through the different client types that you don't want. Because once you eliminate all the clients that you don't want, you can move on to the worthwhile clients, the ones who actually appreciate what you have to offer, the ones who, when you say, I'm going to charge this amount of money for this service, they don't say, oh my God, you're not worth that, and, chisel you down. They say, okay, that's the price I'm willing to pay. Just what one point about what you're saying about how it works out equally. I had a client who unfortunately has passed away. He was a bit of a mentor for me. His name was Gerard Nierenberg. He was the founder of the Negotiation Institute. He was one of the first people many years ago to have written like a full-on book about negotiation and how it can be used like in political areas, interpersonal areas, in business, and so on. He taught me, he came up with this kind of philosophy that he wrote about and talked about, was called the everybody wins philosophy. And he said, look, you think that when you're in negotiation with somebody that you have to win and the other person has to lose. Because, that's what you think. Like, it's like, oh, I got this guy for $1,000. Little does he know I would have done it for 900 or whatever. Like, that's a bad attitude. That's not the way to do it. It has to be, I'm going to build this plugin for this person. I'm going to build this website. I'm going to do this logo for this person. I'm going to do some, on-site SEO for this person, and he's going to get something of value. And my price is $1,000, and I win and he wins. And so Jerry's, approach and something that he instilled in me was, yeah, like everybody can win in the scenario. A good negotiation is actually where everybody is satisfied in the end.
I don't know if it's the same, but it's similar where it's like if nobody's happy, then it was a good negotiation or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's the kind of thing I'm trying to get at. But
Yeah, yeah.
other like psychological like parts of the book is so first I try to explain to people you want to value yourself.
Mhm.
And it's easier said than done. So then I go on explaining in detail about how you can build up confidence in what you do. And then once you build up that confidence, you can charge what you want and you'll feel good about it. And
Yeah.
so I have a whole section on, confidence, which is another kind of psychological aspect of things. A third psychological area that I talk about is basically accounting for interpersonal relationships. So, one of the big problems when we're coming up with pricing is that we generally don't account for the fact that you're trying to persuade somebody to buy from you, and you have your personality, the client has their personality, and then there's the interaction of the two personalities. So, like, what do you do? How do you account for that? And then sometimes when you're like in the middle of working on something for a client, even if you've had them as a client for years, sometimes you're like, oh, there's a client, this client's so annoying, whatever. And it's not always the client. It's not always the client. You could be the one who's saying this is annoying, but it's objectively, it's not really annoying. It's not really a problem. Like a lot of times I hear people say, and I've done this myself, I'm guilty of this myself, saying, oh, yeah, this client's a headache or whatever. But a lot of the times they're asking reasonable questions or they're asking for something reasonable. You just don't have time or you're stressed or you're busy or it's tedious and you don't want to do it. So you're like, oh, yeah, this client's a headache or whatever. But really, it could be you. You could be the problem.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so I talk about this whole, ability to, kind of master interpersonal relationships or at least be good at it. So one factor is everybody knows about the IQ test. Standard IQ test is, 100 IQ is average, and then there's a range 18 to 120 is still basically about 100. So that's like an average person. And then you have, 160 and up, whatever, then you're a genius and super genius and all that. But you're measuring your whole life into like one number, like you do this IQ test. And I know because as I can't say I'm a psychologist because I never wrote the exam, but essentially I was, whatever, a psychologist without, unlicensed psychologist. In any case, I was still giving psychological IQ tests and all these things. Like that was part of my training. These assessments would like kind of narrow you down into one number, and it wouldn't really make any sense. So somebody else came out with a theory saying, look, let's not just focus on one number. Let's focus on multiple intelligences. So if you're good at math, you have logical mathematical skills. So that's your intelligence. If you're body smart, more of an athletic lean, And so the athlete could be exceptionally good at being an athlete, but being really poor at math. And so it really explains how different people have different strengths and weaknesses. And among the different intelligences, you have interpersonal and intrapersonal. So interpersonal is like how good are you talking to people, like in general. If you're going to be a freelancer or run an agency or, just be in business, ideally you're good at actually interpersonal relationships because you can interact with people and conversation is, it flows in a way that, the client says, hey, you know what? I think you're the guy for the job. You're the person for the job. Then there's intrapersonal intelligence. And that part says, how well do you know yourself? And I want people to think about that because knowing yourself means you can create your business, run your business in a very particular way where you can get things done and have the ability to interact with other people to bring that business in so that you can get things done. And so I ask people to take a basic step. And I talk about this again in the book and in my talks where I'll say, look, let's do a personality test. And the one I recommend, there's a lot of them out there. One of them I recommend is 16personalities.com. Go there, do the 10-minute quiz, and it's going to give you one of 16 different personalities. Eight of those are introverted, eight of those are extroverted, and then you'll find a whole series of other personality factors. And it's not perfect. It's not a perfect test, but I assure you it'll give you a good general picture of your personality if you were honest when you answer the questions. Now, here's the key. Just knowing your personality type doesn't mean that all of a sudden your interpersonal skills are going to go through the roof. That's not the deal. What I want for is for people to say, okay, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, which the website will tell you. Go through your weaknesses and say, oh, I'm not good at dealing with people in these situations. I need to be conscious of that. I need to be aware of that. How can I improve? And by improving on your weaknesses, you become just as a person, you become, maybe a better person to, deal with or be around or so on. But business wise, you'll probably impress people a lot more that way. If you're hoping that someone's going to hire you and you're really not good at interpersonal skills and your interpersonal intelligence is really low, work on yourself and get better. And there's like that whole psychological aspect and that how that will help your business grow. Now, remember, if you work for a big company, sure, you can learn from my book, obviously. But if you work for a big company, someone else is dealing with this. Somebody with high interpersonal intelligence is dealing with all the headaches. You just have to program or design or what have you. But if you're a freelancer or running a small agency or a solopreneur, yeah, you need to figure it out because you're the core of what's going on. You're the
You're
core
wearing
of
all
dealing
those
with it.
hats. Yeah.
Yes, you're wearing
Yeah.
all those hats.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's interesting you say that you bring up the working on your weaknesses part. Would you agree, though, that there are some things that you should just look at and go, you know what, I'm just not touching that with a 10-foot pole because I will never, ever be good at that. For instance, I will never be good at dunking a basketball. Doesn't matter. You could put me on a ladder, I'd still miss. Okay. So knowing that there's a difference between addressing certain weaknesses and then recognizing that there are just some weaknesses that you will never be able to really improve upon. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I've thought this through and actually discussed this with one of my lead programmers who like I've been working with for a decade. And we've come to the conclusion that, for example, if you're introverted and like highly introverted in the sense that, like you say, let's say the analogy of, you'll never be able to dunk the ball. If you feel like you'll never be able to properly interact or let's say appropriately interact with clients, then ultimately you will lose out. I mean, it's a reality. Like I can't sugarcoat it, I can't say, oh no, in the end, the guy gets the girl at the end of the movie and they live happily ever after. No,
Right,
if
right,
you're introverted and you don't think that you'll ever, be able to be the extroverted person you need to be to deal with clients, then you will lose out ultimately. And
right.
that's just the way it is. I do suggest that teaming up with people to do that kind of work, can probably save you a lot of headache. If you have trouble, looking clients in the eye or, speaking with some degree of confidence, even though you really know your stuff, you know how to program, you know what the client needs, but you don't know how to get it across because you have anxiety or you're nervous or, you have social anxiety or interaction issues, then yeah, you could get somebody else to deal with it. Hire a virtual assistant, get somebody else, team up with other
Mhm.
freelancers, see what you can do on that front.
And I think that that's a fine line, isn't it? There's a fine line between like just copping out, right? And saying, I'm not good at that, I'm not going to try it, which may just be kind of another way of saying that's out of my comfort zone, right? So there's a difference between stepping out of your comfort zone and just not being good at something and
Hmm.
being able to recognize the difference. I think, for instance, some people might say, I'm a terrible public speaker, but they might get good at it if they just did it more. So that's a comfort zone thing. Whereas, like you said, if you're an introvert, well, there are still some things that you can do to soften that a bit, but there are still areas that you may want to just not approach that and have someone else. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's different degrees of being an introvert, like,
Right.
many or most introverts can kind of come out of their shell for a brief period of time. Once they get off the call, they just need a lot more time to kind of, decompress and be like, okay, okay, that call's over. I'm going to do the work.
Yeah.
And then there's the level of introverts who are like, I, they postpone even talking to the client, and when they do, it's dreadful, and the
Yeah.
conversation might go poorly because they're so panicky and so
Yeah.
on. And that's something else to consider.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I find it always that struggle between, a lot of people say focus on your strengths, which is important, but also staying in your lane is important, but knowing when you can veer out of the lane just a little bit into those other things and strengthen those can only make your game stronger in the long run. Actually, that kind of leads into like the conversation we had about SEO. One of the chapters that you talk about is the art and science of pricing. And it seems like you're a really big, there's the art to this and there's the science to this person. I find
Which
that.
which I didn't even realize that until this minute. That it's true. That I do. There's an art and a science, an art and a
Yeah,
science. But
yeah,
it's true because there's
yeah.
so many things in life that can be broken down into an art and a science.
Hmm.
With SEO, I said the science of SEO is, yeah, you need, H tags and links and meta tags and all this stuff. But the art is how do you finesse that and make that work for that specific page or that specific
Hmm.
website? And for the psychology of pricing as well. There's an art and there's a science to it. What we haven't talked about yet, but what a big chunk of the book is all the different pricing models and the how-tos and how to
Yeah,
calculate it. And I
yeah.
have chapters for everything you could possibly want.
You have, I
Um,
forget, how many chapters do you have? You have like, it's like an
a lot.
insane number of chapters of the potential types of, you know,
Yeah,
clients and whatnot.
yeah,
It's
like to
crazy.
account for all these different variations. Sure, the science is, yeah, read my chapters on how to calculate something. The art is figuring out when should you be using what pricing model, include, your newfound appreciation of your confidence and your value, and, go from there. My approach in the book is really to start off with the basic hourly model, hourly rate, explain why it's good and why it's bad, and, when to use it. And that's actually something that's kind of unique in my book as well. Like, I literally have a section after every pricing model at the end of the chapter, and I'll say, here are situations where you should be using this model. So I make it very clear, like, here's what it is, here are the pros, here are the cons, here's exactly when you should be using this model. And then I'll have another chapter explaining literally how to calculate everything.
Can you give an example of something like that? I mean, you have several, like you said, you do it at the end of every chapter, but just pick one randomly and give an example.
Okay, so for example, for the hourly rate, okay, I mean, I know that everyone who's a freelancer always starts with an hourly rate, and most people listening probably have an hourly rate. Sure, the hourly rate, even though I move away from it, the hourly rate, for example, is great to top things off. So there's like an example of when you want to use the hourly rate while you're still maximizing the rate that you wanted anyway. So let's say I'll give you an example. You charge, let's say, $3,000 to build a small 5-page website. You do everything that the client wants, and then at the very end, there's a little bit of scope creep. The client says, "Oh, actually, I don't just want, like one photo for this. I actually want a photo gallery with like 17 photos." So what does that mean? So it means you have to add a page, add it to the navigation menu, do a little bit of basic SEO to that page, and then add in a little photo gallery and upload 17 photos. Okay, so all that work, let's say, takes you an extra 4 hours. If your rate is $100 per hour, then you tell the client, okay, I'm just going to add on an extra 4 hours of work. It's extra $400. Take it or leave it. That's what it'll cost for that. So that would be an example of, yeah, okay, that's a good time to say, yes, an hourly rate is worthwhile, and make sure it's in your contract. Anything over and above what I agreed to will have an hourly rate. And so every pricing model has their time and place, so to speak. And the idea is to be really fluid with these things, like to really be able to say, okay, that was part of the original contract and that is extra. So that's going to cost you a little bit more. And look, even now, after all these years, 25 years of doing this, like more now, oh my God, yeah, more, getting
Let's not
older.
talk about it.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. After all these years of doing this, even now, sometimes I'm like, okay, okay, it's another 2 hours. Fine, fine, fine. I'll just throw it in and just do it and whatever. And then other times, like, no, no, you want that? No, that's good. That's going to cost you. It
Do you
really
find that
depends.
that's a result of your interpersonal relationship with the person or the client, or
I think
is
it's more
it
intrapersonal.
or
I think it's about it's
intrapersonal?
it's
Yeah.
about me. It's like,
Yeah.
by the time I call him and explain that, or by the time I
Uh,
write an email to him explaining this is gonna be, that's gonna be 20 minutes of writing the email. I'll just get it done in 2 hours, and it's no big deal, and it's done.
uh-huh.
And client's happy, I'm happy, everybody's happy. I'm still getting paid. Client's happy with what they're getting, and whatever. So it really depends. It really depends. I've had that backfire too, and which is one of the reasons that I've lost thousands of dollars over the years, not so much these days, but especially earlier in my career, where I'm like, okay, well, we agreed to $5,000. It's going to be this, 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 this. I have a bulleted list of all the things they're going to get. But then I throw in a little bit of this and throw in that and this and that and this and that. Next thing I know, I'm like, oh my God, I just gave like an extra 100 hours of work. Like, I'm crazy. What I've realized is that most clients don't care that you added 100 hours of work and that extra photo gallery and that extra cool feature and that extra whatever. They don't care. They're like, look, I paid you a few $1,000s. You give me whatever the hell you agreed to give me. And if you want to throw in more things, then fine. It's just expected. That's just how it is. I rarely have clients who say, oh my God, that must have taken you an extra week of time. Oh, let me throw
Yeah.
more money at you. Oh my
Yeah.
God. No, no, never. In over 25 years, not once has that happened.
It seems like the standard client answer to anything is all you have to do is this, right?
Right, right.
And well, you're right. That's all you're gonna see. But what you
Mhm.
don't know is, yeah.
I've had people call. I mean, in my early days, I used to give so much information about SEO over the phone. So I had an SEO consulting service, which I still do. But people call from all over the world, especially let's say between 2002 or 2003, let's say, until about 2015, it was so hard to get information, like quality, good information on
Hmm.
SEO.
Hmm.
And I was doing like over the phone workshops. It was like a crazy wild time all over the
Mm.
world. Like as far as
Yeah.
like New Zealand, people were calling me and
Mm.
whatever. And sometimes people would ask so many questions, and I'd be so excited to share my knowledge that 3 hours in, I'm like, okay, do you want to buy a consultation? Do you want to buy
Yeah.
an hour of consultation? I'd be like, well, you just gave me like 3 hours of free information.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I learned early on is in those cases, just ask them for a testimonial. Just say,
Hmm.
give me a testimonial saying, yeah, I'm very happy with the information you gave me. The consultation
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah. At
At
least you
least
get
there's
something out of
something.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going through the book, I mean, you literally have, I am not kidding, you have 61 chapters. I'm just going to randomly pick a chapter and have you talk about it a little bit because it's like, otherwise, this would be like a 52 part once a week podcast. Client psychology, red flag clients. I'm
What do you
picking
want
the
to
very first thing that I see right there.
know? One of my favorite topics. Just as a side note, if I do go ahead and make and put out my course, which I started working on 5 years ago, and I actually do create the course. I sorry, not create, but publish it, like refine it. I think one of the first things I'm going to talk about are the red flag clients because one of the biggest things that I can't stand is people who waste my time. I would rather just sit and do nothing than have people waste my time. There are so many people out there who will waste your time. The looky-loos and the tire kickers, you know, these are people who are going to come around, they're going to call you and they have no intention of buying from you, like the looky-loos. They have no intention of buying from you and they ask question after question after question. They're going to call you. They're going to call all your competitors. They just want free information. They don't even know what they want. They have no idea. Even after you explain to them clearly what they need, they're like, I still don't understand. I still don't know what I need. And the best way to identify them, and so this is, like, just so you know, a side note, I love giving practical information. So this book, a lot of it is get motivated, whatever. But then it's like, here's 4 chapters on how to get motivated with like actual actionable things that you can do. And so one of the actionable things that I talk about is if you suspect you might have a looky-loo calling you, wasting your time, here's what you do. You ask them, when do you think you want to launch this website? Let's just say it's for a website project. Oh, I don't know. Like, oh, you don't know? Okay. What's your budget for this project? Oh, I don't know. Are you the decision maker for this project? Oh, I might be. Okay. Can you tell me more about the project? No, I'm going to need you to sign an NDA. It's proprietary, whatever. It's like, okay, whatever. Do you, do you have hosting for your website? I don't know. Like, what color is your underwear? I don't know. Like they have, you know what I mean? Like they have no,
Yeah.
everything's an I don't know. They don't know
Yeah. Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
because they really don't half the time and they just want information. So at the end of the conversation, we're like, well, can you write me a proposal and whatever? It's like, don't bother. Don't waste
Hmm.
your time.
Yeah.
So it's like there are ways, there are identifiers. There's the people, the guys like the 4:59 p.m. Friday caller, which is like one of the red flag clients I talk about in the book also. Guys sitting around his office, 4:59 p.m. on a Friday. It's quiet. You hear a pin drop. Everybody's gone home for the weekend, and he's like, you know what? I think I need a website. Goes to Google, looks you up, and finds your website, calls you, and you have this tremendous conversation, and it's like, 45-minute talk, even though I only recommend, giving them 20 minutes, but that's another chapter.
Hmm.
But let's just say you have this whole long talk and 45 minutes later it's 6 p.m. and you're like, all right, well, have a nice weekend. I'll have that proposal for you Monday morning. And then Monday morning comes, you give them a call. I say, hey, I just have a few questions to ask you because I'm just trying to clarify a few things for the proposal. And they'll be like, wait, who are you? And I'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm Brian from Unicio. Like, we spoke on Friday afternoon about a website. Wait, we did? Yeah, remember Friday afternoon you called like at 4:59 p.m.,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
at 5:15 p.m. you called me on Friday.
Yeah.
Oh, you're who? You're who? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. They don't remember you. They don't remember you. So,
Or the motivation is gone. They might remember you, but oh, I thought about it over the weekend and I'm
yeah,
gonna, yeah, whatever. Yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so there's just so many types of red flag clients. In fact, I've come up with like I think 6 or 7 more since publishing the book. Here's the thing. In business, like most of the time the philosophy is take on everybody you can, make lots of money. And to me, there's so many reasons not to take on a client.
Yeah.
Like one of my best friends is a very successful businessman. He's owned several businesses. And for a while, he was always on my case of like, wait, you turn people down? No, 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 no. You take everybody on. What are you talking about? That's how you run a successful business. I'm like, no, 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 no. I like to sleep at night. I don't want to be
Mm,
nervous that I have some crappy client that when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to get blasted because I didn't do something like this or that or whatever. He wanted this, I gave him that, whatever. The timing was off, or he disagreed on something, or he didn't want to pay for something. I don't want headaches. I want people who appreciate the service that I have to offer. And so I filter people like crazy. I pre-qualify them. One of the things I talk about, I can't remember if this is in the book, but I definitely talk about this in my talks. You know, when it's the playoffs, like, if you, I'm obviously in Montreal, a big hockey fan, we get to the playoffs and people make playoff brackets of who's playing against who, and then after a few games, somebody gets eliminated and they move to the next round and so on. And then eventually, like in hockey, they would win the Stanley Cup. I say put clients in on that those first rounds and ask them a question and eliminate half of those people. So for every or potential clients. So for example, you get 10 calls from 10 potential clients. They're all playing each other. You ask them a question, already five have been eliminated from round one. So they're out. Then you ask them a second question, and already, a few more have been eliminated. And then you ask a third question, and then they're eliminated. And only one person is going to make it through, and where you say, hey, you know what? He answered all my questions in a very satisfactory way. Yes, this is the guy I want as a client. You'll ask, it'll be, like when do you need to launch it? What kind of website is it? So for example, so I don't like to do e-commerce sites anymore. So people call, even it's funny, I just got a call for an e-commerce site just a couple of days ago, and I told the guy like I'm done with e-commerce. I find that most people who start e-commerce sites, they close it like within a year, and it's
mm.
very demoralizing. And by the end, they blame it all on you. Even though in the beginning I always tell them, you don't understand, like this is a big investment of time,
Yeah, yeah.
and people don't get it. So let's say 5 out of 10 people who call me want an e-commerce site. In that first round, I would say, okay, well, we're not doing e-commerce, so you're eliminated, And then second round, so 5 out of 10 callers are already gone. Then the next five call and say, well, what's your budget? Oh, my budget's under 1,000. Okay, well, I'm not touching your site unless it's, let's say, 5,000 and up. So, okay, 3 out of 5 of those are gone. So now you have two left. Okay, you realize, you know what, this guy is not easy to deal with. He's very like abrasive over the phone. I don't want to deal with this guy. Okay, he's gone. The last guy, okay, he's got a budget. He doesn't want e-commerce. He has something that I want to actually build, and he's very pleasant to talk to. Great. He's the winner. He's getting a proposal. I'm very big on qualifying clients to get to that kind of get through that elimination round, that playoff bracket till say who wins, who's getting the proposal from me. I hate people waste my time, and the red flag clients is a really big deal to me.
So along that line, then, what would you say to freelancers or agencies where their response might be, yeah, well, that's great if I have 10 people knocking the door down to contact me, but I'm scared that I'm only going to get one.
It's a common and difficult question. So at the end of the day, I believe, and this is more of a personal belief, the universe will send people to you. So, I mean, that's like a whole law of attraction thing. But like,
Mhm.
if you really, really want those clients, the universe will send them to you. So I'm not a religious person. If anything, law of attraction would be my religion because I can just explain away my life as a law of attraction thing. Like there's times where I'm like, oh, business is slowing down. I really hope business picks up. And then the next day it's like, oh, $10,000 contract. Like, oh, okay, I
Mhm.
could work with that.
Mhm.
Like that's just been like the way of my life anyway. It's all anecdotal, but it works.
Mhm.
If you feel that if the powers of law of attraction is not strong enough with you, like the force not being strong enough with you, then you have to go out and find those clients and be more proactive. I'm used to the pull where I send like a mental message up to the universe and I'm like, okay, I need some clients, things are slow.
Mhm.
And they just tend to come in most of the time. I usually don't go with the push. I usually don't go out there and
You're not a
email
pavement pounder.
email yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
I don't go out and email people.
Psychologically, I think that a lot of that probably has to do with, you touched on it very briefly earlier, the confidence level, right? If you're scared that you're not going to get clients, then your confidence level is already low. And as a result, that's going to come through and show to anybody out there that you're not confident. And when you're not confident, it doesn't create a lot of confidence in the potential customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, you want people coming to you. Like it's
Mhm.
much easier to make a sale when people come to you versus you go to them. When I got off stage, I spoke at a conference, a developer conference in Montreal last week called Confu, and I was teaching them about running a freelancer business. And after when I got off stage, someone was asking me about cold calling, and he's like, "Well, I'm trying to grow my business through cold calling," and I'm like, "Well, that's really tough, you know.
Yeah.
Like not
Yeah.
only are
Good
you
luck.
going
Yeah.
out there, but you're catching them off
Yeah.
guard when they're not in the
Yeah.
mindset of even buying a website, and that's what you're
Right.
trying to do." I'm
Right.
like, okay, like it's
And
okay,
nobody
but
likes to be interrupted.
yeah, absolutely.
And
Nobody
when
likes to
you're
be
cold
interrupted.
calling, 9 times out of 10, you're interrupting somebody.
Yeah.
And
And that's
yeah,
the push, right?
yeah,
So
that's
that's
the
the
push.
thing. That's the
Yeah.
push. It's like you're on top of them when they're not ready to buy. That's one of the beauties of search engines. And even though with AI and ChatGPT and all these other products coming out, the search game has changed. But ultimately, Google is like the perfect situation because it's like their mind is primed. Like, I need a photographer for my wedding. So you type in, wedding photographer, in my case, Montreal wedding photographer. I'm ready to hire that person or start entertaining those people. And I need to see who's available, get my mind thinking about it. And it's like, now's the time. If you're at work and you work at McDonald's and somebody calls on your cell phone and says, "Yeah, what's going on? I'm flipping this burger." And it's like, "Yeah, I'm a wedding photographer. Do you need my service?" It's like, "Yeah, now's not the time. Go
Yeah,
away."
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
But then when
Right.
they're sitting at home at night, it's like, "Okay, I need a wedding photographer," and they're ready to go. And so it's so connected. It makes so much sense in that respect. That's why, like, I love the whole SEO game and how all that works, even though things are changing, obviously, especially with social media growth too, and so on.
Yeah. Right.
TikTok is changing the game completely. If I was starting today, I wouldn't be at all focusing on SEO the way I did back then. Like I started SEO in 1997. Like Google started in 98, just to put that into
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back
That's
then,
just
SEO was
insane.
pretty simple.
I remember the first time I heard the term Google, I'm like, what are you talking about? Because everything was Yahoo and Alta Vista and Ask
Mhm.
Jeeves.
I used to just one
Oh,
quick
yeah.
anecdote. I used to have to explain to people why it's important to be listed in a search engine. Like think
Yeah,
about that. Like
I
in the
know.
90s, the
It's
late 90s,
crazy.
early
Yeah.
2000s,
Yeah.
I had to explain like you don't understand if you're in a search engine, people will find you.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what do you mean? What do you mean they'll
Yeah.
find me?
Yeah.
Like people
Yeah.
they just didn't
Yeah. Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. I remember Gopher.
Gopher. Yeah, oh
That
my
was a
God. Yeah.
long time ago. There's so many chapters I just want to ask about, but like the next one that pops out at me, and I think that this is probably a big one. Chapter 8, best practices in justifying prices to clients. Personally, I feel like that's where a lot of people fall short, is like they're almost embarrassed by their pricing. And so it's hard for them to justify their pricing when they don't come across as actually believing in it to begin with.
Okay, so actually, that's really good because that segues into something I was actually going to say before, but I
Oh, okay.
forgot. I
I read your
forgot
mind.
this is perfect regarding the push and pull versus people coming to you versus you going to find them. If you find that people are not coming to you, you need to increase your social proof. That helps with your price justification. It's
Mm-hmm.
all tied together.
Mm-hmm.
So social proof means you have a clear presence on social media. I mean, you start with LinkedIn, even though I really am not a fan of LinkedIn, but you
Sure.
need to have a LinkedIn profile. You need to have, especially if you're in the web industry, have some basic website. Even if it's a one pager with a photo of you, a little description of what you do, and maybe you scroll down a little bit and have a couple samples, have a little portfolio, something that shows that you're a real person with a real business, something people can latch onto and find. If you've won like a web design award or a logo award, or you have a degree in web programming or something like that, some sort of proof that shows, okay, yeah, there's something of value here. This person can do what I need. You need that proof, especially portfolios. These days, to me, portfolios is like among the best things you can do, especially if you're a really good designer. I've had people call and see their competitors' designs and be like, "Can we just knock that off and put my logo on it?" I'm like, "No, we
Yeah.
no, we can't do that." If you're listed in Google where you can get your reviews, make sure they're all like 5 stars. Address any low, 1 stars. I have like one-star review from some bot. I don't know. I don't even know why. Someone I've never even heard of just said, "Here, 1 star." Like that's it. No explanation, no
Mm.
nothing. Totally destroyed my numbers. Like, okay, everything else is 5 stars. Like, okay. Or except for one that's like 4 stars because he didn't like the location of my office. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
that's rough. That's
Oh,
rough.
so difficult. So he gave me 4 stars. All
Wow.
right, whatever. That's
Yeah.
fair. If
Yeah.
that's how he felt. That's how he felt.
There was one that I saw that was also, I don't remember where it was, but something about how to deal with customers who constantly ask for discounts, I think was in there somewhere.
Yeah, so there's a few places in the book where I literally give you a scenario and then I give you the wording of the potential answer. So there's a common theme. I gave all these different kind of subtle variations of the conversation that could happen. And I said, like, here's what you can say. The gist of it is people will say, look, you're really expensive. And I'm going to go to your competitor because they're cheaper. But it's like, no, but they're talking to you. They're talking to you specifically. They want to hire you, but you're too expensive for them. So you have to explain to them and justify, okay, well, this is why you're going to pay this price because one, you love me, you're enjoying talking to me. There's a reason why you're still talking to me, even though I'm higher than the other people. But I tell people, say, look, for example, when it comes to a website, say, look, this is an investment, it's not an expense. Because a lot of business owners, they look at their website as an afterthought. I've dealt with business owners who I know 101% from their stats that they're getting a lot of views. My SEO is working. They're getting leads. I see what's going on. They're getting, 5 leads a week through their form. They must be getting phone calls as well that we're not tracking in some cases, and all this stuff. And they'll call me after 2 years and be like, "Yeah, I'm not going to renew hosting. I'm going to let my website go." And I'll say like, "Why? Why are you doing that?" "Oh, because no, I'm not getting any business from it." Like, come on, we both know you're getting business from it. Like you don't want to like pay for a maintenance plan anymore. You don't want to pay for hosting. You just don't want to put money into it. You know why? Because you think it's an expense and you don't understand that it's an investment. This is an investment. This is your marketing. This is how we do it. And a lot of business owners, especially the old school ones, they don't see it that way. They don't understand that it's like it's an investment, not an expense. And you sometimes you have to flat out explain it to them. And some people will still deny and be like, okay, whatever, and roll their eyes. And some people will be like, yeah, you know what? I didn't think of it that way. Okay, this is like my marketing budget. Sure, yeah, okay, that makes sense. A few $1,000s a year for a maintenance plan and to not get hacked and for to do some promotion and whatever is worth it, given that my business makes, $250,000 a year in sales and
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
you know?
Right, right.
Not all the times, but sometimes you have to just spell it out to them and tell them.
Mm.
And so there's all these conversations around the issue of pricing that come up. And so I write extensively about, here's literally what you can say. And one of my top recommendations is what I just said and convince them it's an investment, not an expense. But there's lots of things that can be said. Somebody will come back to you and say, look, it's a $4,000 project. And they're like, okay, well, I'm willing to spend, 3,000. What do you do in that case? My favorite suggestion is probably one of the most empowering things you can do in your entire business life, and that is use the mute button. Put them on hold. Because here's the thing. You give a proposal, you're at that stage, the client calls you back and says, "Yeah, I want to go ahead with this," or emails you. But let's just say if they call you and they say, "I know it's 4,000 and I really want to work with you." I hear that a lot. "I really want to work with you. But it's like kind of really a lot of money. Can I
Mhm.
have a discount?" And that's the thing. And I'll be like, "Look, you know why you really want to work with me? Because everybody really wants to work with me, which is why they're paying that price. My social
Mhm.
proof is there, my experience is there. That's why they're paying. That's that's the thing. When you're in a situation where everyone wants to work with you, you can charge whatever you want. And this is what I want for this project. But here's the thing: if they catch you off guard, and this is true for anything in life, it's not just business, but if someone catches you off guard, especially on a sensitive topic, and money and pricing, that's an extremely sensitive topic in our personal lives, but also in business. And so when it comes to pricing as a sensitive topic and somebody asks you for a discount, it catches you off guard. And you're thinking, well, I asked for 4,000, but he said he wants $500 off. And in the moment, a lot of times, and I'm very guilty of this, I'm like, okay, yeah, 3,500. Sure, we'll do it for 3,500 because 3,500 to pay my rent is still better than nothing. It's okay. So now with years of experience, I'm like, you know what another $500 is? $500 in my pocket away from the client's pocket, that I earned because I believe I'm worth it and my confidence is high and my value to the client is high. And so I want my $500. So what do you do in this situation? And this is the key. Whenever you're faced with a sensitive topic that you're caught off guard about and you're on the phone, you put the person on hold. So you're talking to them, you say, look, John, okay, you want $500 discount? Okay, let me put you on a quick hold just for just give it like 2 seconds. Okay, never in the history of the planet has someone said, no, you can't put me on hold. Everyone will say, no problem. Yeah, yeah, put me on hold. Sure, sure, sure. And what do? You put them on hold, you hit that mute button, hit the hold button, depending on your phone, and you take a deep breath and you look around and, you open the window and listen to the birds chirping and, okay, get back on. And you're like, look, John, I looked it over. I got to tell you, you're getting really good value here. I can't give you a discount. We're gonna have to stay at 4,000. And most of the time, they're gonna say, okay, yeah, like I had to try. It's like, okay, I get
Yeah,
it. You had
yeah.
to try. Sure,
Mhm.
I get it.
Can't blame them for
Uh,
trying, right?
yeah, I can't blame
Yeah,
you for trying. You wanted
yeah,
$500 off. I
yeah.
understand. You want to save some money, save a few bucks, but I'm offering you really good value here. I have a skill that you want. I have, social proof. I've been doing this for many years or a long time, a lot of experience, and I'm going to benefit your business tremendously. So I can't give you that discount. Now, let me explain to you the overarching nature from a psychological point of view. See, here's another psychological part of the book. What are you doing? What happens when you put them on hold? You're gaining your power back because as soon as they ask you a question that throws you off, especially on a sensitive topic like money, money matters, you're like, uh oh, you start to panic because it's money and it's like, it's money that I want and money that I'm trying to persuade someone to give me for my service. And so you want to give in because you don't want to lose out. And so you put them on hold and you're regaining your power. You're regaining that strength of like, okay, okay, I'm going to take control of this conversation. Like you've thrown me off. We're going to pause. Okay, we paused. Now I'm coming back in, and the control of the conversation is back to me, and I'm saying no. There's no discount. This is a fair deal. Take it or leave it. And so that hold button, the mute button, becomes literally one of the most empowering things you can do in your entire business career. We've done it in house. Like I've done it so many times. I didn't know early on. I wish I knew this, like, my first 15 years. But slowly over time, I realized, and with the help of somebody who was working with me for a while, he's like, wait, it almost happened by accident because I was like, okay, let me just put you on hold for a second. And I turned to a programmer. Can we program it for this many hours or this amount of work or whatever? Oh, we can't do that. Okay. Okay. I'm really sorry. Like we can't give you a discount. And then I realized, wait a minute. Okay. There's something to this,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Another psychological component is when you're negotiating with a client or discussing the project with a client, always be prepared to walk away. That's like a big confidence factor. In fact, I consider it my number one piece of advice if you want to gain confidence. When you're talking to a client, be prepared to walk away. Know that you have value that they want, and be prepared to say, no, I will not do that service for that low price. If you can get to the point where you feel that way, you'll close a lot more deals because your confidence will show.
Yeah, I think walking away is actually a huge confidence booster because even when you walk away, when you're scared to death and you can't pay the rent and all those things, but you walk away, you're like, the world didn't end. I just walked away from that, and the world actually didn't end, even though it felt like it was going to. And so I do think that that does give you confidence, and it really is kind of a bandwidth thing, right? If you end up taking on the clients that are trying to nickel and dime you, you're not leaving yourself open to the ones who see your value and are willing to take it. And then all of a sudden you're having to say no because you're overwhelmed, or you're saying yes and then you're not serving anybody's purpose because you're overwhelmed. So I think that walking away is really, really hard, especially in those early years when you're trying to get going. But the more you do it and the more confidence that you get, and the more that you see that the world doesn't end, the better off you are ultimately. And
Right.
and and the more you're going to recognize which ones to walk away from and which ones not. And there are going to be times that you walk away that you probably say, I probably shouldn't have walked away from that. But then you learned the value lesson there is you learned what type of clients not to walk away from.
Yeah, and sometimes I've lost clients because I've walked away and didn't want to do it for their price, and I'm like, oh, I missed out on 20,000. But it's like, yeah, but it was like a $60,000 project that they wanted for
Yeah,
20,000. So you think,
yeah,
oh man, I could have used that 20,000, but it's really a $60,000 project,
yeah,
like
yeah,
so.
yeah.
Some sucker out there will do it for 20,000,
Mm.
fine. A lot of times the clients also don't realize, and this is the part of understanding, the clients and trying to persuade them and how they have their own personalities. Getting back to what I was saying before, is sometimes clients don't realize that what they're going to get from the guy who takes the project at 20,000 is not nearly, it's like not even close to what they thought they were getting if they would have paid the 60,000. Now I understand if they don't have the budget, they don't have the budget, but don't expect, a Ferrari when you only have a budget for a Honda,
Right,
like
right. Yeah,
that's, but some people do, and that's a
yeah,
problem.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk about relative value, and then I'll probably just like do a quick run through of like your sections within the book. Because like I said, we could talk literally all day about this. For one thing,
Mhm.
this is a fascinating subject to me, but for another, it's like this book is so full of information. It's definitely a book you're going to want to, read probably 50 times. And by the way, it's very easy to read. I'll add that too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But
I do know that several people have noted, like have messaged me and said, I keep it on my desk now as like a desk reference.
yeah,
And
yeah.
some people have told me I can't believe I lived without this book. Like
Yeah.
that's like the most flattering thing someone can say,
Yeah.
right?
No, that's really cool. Well, of course, you put your heart and soul into this book. You want to hear that it's of value to people. So, talk a little bit about relative pricing, just because
Oh,
it's
right.
such a
So
simple subject to talk about.
all right, so here's the thing. And so like I said, this book is like three books in one, which I realized only when I finished the book that I could make three books out of it. Let's say you've got the confidence, you've got everything, whatever. You don't need any other help but the pricing models. So there's an enormous part of the book is about the pricing models. And I know that most people do hourly rates. Then there are people who do project fees. And then you get a little bit more technical, like productized services and then retainer fees and value-based pricing. And then I have the one that I coined called relative value pricing. Now, I'm not the only person out there to do relative value pricing, but as far as I know, especially after extensive research, I'm the only one who formalized it and made it a much easier way to kind of go about it. It's not perfect, but there's a lot of details that help you come up with a price and maximize the price. And so the idea is with hourly pricing, there are two key issues that you lose out on. So the first one is you're penalized for getting good at something. So for example, if you have a service that you want to offer and it takes you 8 hours to do it and you're charging $800 an hour, you tell a client, okay, that's going to take 8 hours. With the hourly pricing model, that's going to be $800. And then they agree to it, you do it, and that's fine. And then you do it again and again and again. Now, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And so what you discover is, let's say 6 months down the line or a year down the line, it takes you 1 hour to do what used to take you 8 hours. So a client comes to you and says, well, how long is it going to take you to do? And you say, well, 1 hour. Well, then now you're only charging $100 for what you used to get $800 for. So you're getting penalized for getting good at something. So that's a big problem. In fact, that's probably the number one problem with the hourly pricing model. The other big problem with that model is that you're limiting the amount of money you can make because you can't make more money than there are hours in the day. So if you're willing to work 40 hours a week at $100 an hour, okay, that's $40,000. That's rather $4,000. But if you want to make, I don't know, $10,000 a week or $100,000 a week, at some point your hourly rate won't make sense. You're not going to charge $800 an hour because you can do something that used to take you 8 hours and then do it in 1 hour. Like you're not, that doesn't make
And you're
sense.
not going to work 16-hour days or
Yeah, and you're not going
whatever.
to work
Yeah.
16-hour days.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, I have a whole chapter on how to calculate your hourly rate, and it's such a reality check for people because people just assume, oh, well, I'll work 35 to 40 hours a week times 52 weeks, and try to calculate everything that way. And I'm like, no. You've got the kind of, Christmas, New Year's vacation time. You've got summer vacation time. Then you take a day off for your kid's graduation. Then you're going to take, 4 days off because you're sick. And then, you need a mental health day. So then that day, whatever you take off. By the time you take off all these days, then you have the regular holidays like Labor Day and all these other holidays. Then you realize, oh wait, no, I'm not working. I can't remember the exact number anymore off the top of my head, but let's say normally you work 5,000 hours a year in your mind. Now we're down to like 3,000 hours. You know what I mean? Like so, it's like
Mhm.
okay, because there's all these other things where you won't be working. Or What about the fact that a lot of the time your administration time of running your business, building your own website, running your own ads, answering emails, all of that, nobody's paying you for that, but you have to put time into that. So
Yeah.
you can't include that in the time that you're billing people. So there are major problems with the hourly rate, even though that's the easy one, that's the mindless one, it's the one that everyone just goes to. It's like, okay, let me figure out a number and hope for the best. So yeah, so I talk extensively on that. But here's the thing. People think that they've kind of beat the hourly rate because they came up with a project fee. So they'll say, okay, well, it took me 5 hours to do this. So I know it'll take me roughly 5 to 10 hours to do something. My rate is $100 per hour. I'm going to tell this client it costs $1,000 to do. If it takes me 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, wow, then I like squeezed out a few extra hours worth of money that I didn't have to work for because it only took me 7 hours. But my project fee is such that I made I charged 1,000. So people say project fees, that's the way to go. I take that a step further with relative value pricing. I say, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to account for two things that come up all the time when it comes to pricing that people don't even think about. So you can start from the hourly rate. So if you usually base your pricing on an hourly rate, or we can start for a project fee because if you typically based your pricing on that way to go, fine. I say, look, let's look at the unique scenario. What is the scenario that we're talking here? So you've got your hourly rate, but a unique scenario might be a rush job. Somebody calls you and they need something really quickly. You have to drop whatever you're doing, whether it's work for another client or playing with your kid or spending time on your hobbies, whatever it is that you are going to do at that time, you are now dropping it so that you can do the work because it's an emergency and it's a rush job. So, what do you do in that scenario? The scenario is I'm changing my life for the client immediately in an unanticipated way. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'm going to do it. So you say, I'm going to charge 50% more, and you account for that. And so that becomes your baseline. So it's like in a situation of a rush job, this unique scenario is I'm changing my life. Then you want to look at the opportunity. And the opportunity is there an opportunity? So, and I break it down extensively in the book of like, we look at client opportunities. Is the person well connected? Do they know a lot of people? Are they the head of an association where if you get work for like, the head of the association, maybe he'll tell everybody else in the association and then you'll get more work from members of the association, just like as an example. Or it might be a career opportunity where you're saying, hey, you know what? By working on this project, I can learn more about this topic. Or maybe this is, I wanted to work with that plugin for a really long time and I didn't have an opportunity before, but now I do. So, okay, this is really worthwhile. And so on and so forth. So, and it goes on with all these different opportunities that I mentioned. Then there's so many out there to consider. So the main thing is look at the unique scenario and then look at the opportunity and adjust accordingly. Now with rush jobs, because you're pushing your whole life aside to do something in a rush, I say, okay, you add 50% to the price. But what if the unique opportunity is okay, well, if I satisfy this guy in an emergency, he's going to tell all his friends and there's good opportunity for more work from his friends. Okay, maybe I'll only charge him 25% extra. But either way, you're charging more because it's a rush job. I say you need to account for that. In my book, I have one chapter in each of 20 different scenarios, rush jobs being one of them. Another common one that people ask me about, so I always talk about it, is friends and family discount, especially for people who are just starting. Friends and family discount comes up all the time. They're like, oh, you want to build up your portfolio. And so you tell your friends, you tell your family, and they're in some way trying to help you out by hiring you. So here's an example of a scenario that I talk about frequently. So let's say a laundromat calls you and they're like, well, we need a website. We want people to know that we're around in this neighborhood and the different machines and services that we have. You say, great. You do a whole assessment, figure it all out. You come up with your project fee of $3,000 and you'd be satisfied to build it for $3,000. But there's a problem because the owner of this new laundromat is actually your cousin. And you know that if you don't build this website for your cousin at a discount, your mom is going to be really pissed at
Right.
you. And and sitting down at Thanksgiving dinner, you're going to be the pariah. You're going to be that evil, bad,
Yeah, yeah,
technological
yeah,
person in the
yeah.
family who didn't give cousin Jimmy a discount and you didn't want to help support his new business. You become the problem. And so you don't want that. And so when you come here with prices, you usually don't think about these things. You don't think about these kind of like intangibles, these um, you
Right.
know, life occurrences that usually are involved in coming up with a price.
The
And so
politics of it all.
yeah, the family politics.
Yeah,
Like when
yeah,
does family politics affect what you're charging somebody, right?
yeah, yeah.
So then I say, okay, so the unique scenario is, you friends and family are coming to you asking for a discount. What do you do? And then you say, well, what's the opportunity here? Is it going to cause problems for you? Like where do you fit in opportunity wise? And the opportunity is, yeah, you'll have a piece for your portfolio, you'll make some money, but you also have to satisfy your cousin and the family. The thing to do, what I say is establish a baseline rate in these cases and say, look, I'm going to offer you 10% off or 15% off. Any friend or family comes to me, that's the discount I'm giving. You take it or leave it. So everyone should be satisfied. You're getting a discount, so you're happy you got a discount. And, I'm still getting the work and the portfolio piece, and
Yeah,
everybody's happy.
yeah,
And so,
yeah.
and then I have 18 other scenarios in
Yeah.
addition to rush jobs and friends and
That's why I
family
said
discounts.
relative value pricing is such a simple topic, but I mean, those are a couple of good examples. You talk about the pricing mindset as part one. Part two is client psychology. Part three is pricing tactics and strategies. Part four is pricing fundamentals. Part five, the essential pricing models. I think a lot of people would be interested in that. And part six, relative value pricing, unique scenarios, where you have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10.
There should be 21 chapters in
There's
that
21
section.
chapters just on that. Yeah. Part seven is pricing additional WordPress business models. I don't know that this is specific to Word. It doesn't have to be specific to WordPress, I imagine.
Well, no, actually, okay, so here's the thing. So the book says WordPress edition, but
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
only edition that's out there for now. I added a section on if you're running a plugin business, a theme business, or if you're a content creator, just because anybody in the WordPress ecosystem can benefit from the book. So I was like, I threw those in as well. A lot of people have kind of given me a hard time. They're like, are you sure it's good for me? Because it says WordPress edition. So I might actually put out a sort of regular edition. So the WordPress edition is because most of my examples are WordPress related, but it's anything in the WordPress ecosystem. So it could be building a website, plugin, theme, SEO, blogging, like everything is it all pertains to anybody who would use WordPress for something in that area or programming, web design, so on. I might actually put out a put out the course and I might not specify WordPress anymore, even though it'll be great for
Yeah.
people who are in the
Well,
WordPress ecosystem.
yeah, I can tell you, I work here in a co-work, and I actually loaned this book to a woman here. She's an event planner. And I said, you need to read this because one of the things that she struggles with is pricing models and things like that. And so there's a lot of things that in this book that you can apply to almost any type of business if you have clients and you have to provide pricing and you have to provide proposals or anything like that. The psychology behind it is the same regardless of the industry most of the time.
And something that people need to consider is that I also do the reverse of charging, which is like most people when they think of like, okay, well, how much should I charge? I want to charge, $40 an hour and get started and whatever. And like, okay, fine. But I go the other way around too. And I have a calculation where I say, well, how much do you want to make? Oh, you
Mm,
want to make like, 70,000 a year? Okay, well, let's calculate that. Like you have to earn, let's say you have
yeah.
to charge 125,000 and after taxes and this and that and the other, okay, that might bring you down to 70,000 per year. So then I
Yeah.
show you how to do it backwards too.
Yeah, you start at the end and work backwards, which
Yeah.
is one of my favorite ways to do almost any project or anything is you start at the end. And you learn that when you're young, doing those mazes, right? You start in the
Mhm.
middle. It's a lot easier when you start in the middle and go out to the
All right.
the entrance and the other way around. And I think project planning and things like that are similar. Where can they get the book?
Actually, for now, either directly through me or Amazon.
Okay, okay,
I haven't made it available anywhere else, which I
okay.
probably should, but
hmm
I mean, Amazon seems to satisfy the need pretty well.
And as I discovered accidentally when I wrote the review, there's a Kindle edition.
Right. Right.
So I did not realize that when you're writing reviews, you can write the review for the hard copy or for the Kindle edition, and I wrote for the Kindle edition. But
Yeah, it's very weird. People would tell me, "Oh my God, I love this, I love this, I love this," and I'm like, "Don't just tell me. Put it on Amazon and tell everybody else." And for some
yeah,
reason,
yeah,
people are very shy
yeah,
about it. I don't know
yeah,
why they don't put it out. They'll go
yeah,
out of their way to message me and say, "I loved it." Okay,
yeah,
tell everybody. Don't just
yeah.
tell me.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a great book, and I will probably read it more than once. And despite the fact that I don't run an agency, like I said, there are some practices in here that help with different way of thinking things and some paradigm shifts in some way. So I think it's pretty cool. So once again, the book is The Psychology of Pricing. And Brian, as usual, where can people find you?
You can go to my last name, rotztein.com. So rotztein.com. And from there, it's a jump off point to all the different things that I do. Sign up for my newsletter. This is literally the first time I'm ever on a podcast. Of all my history of podcast appearances, I've never actually told people to do that. But I realized I need to get people signing up again and get more active. So if I put out a course or if I put something out that, if you're interested in this book or marketing, growing your business, then probably my what I call the once in a while email because I literally send it out almost never. But when I do send something out, it'll be worthwhile. So yeah,
It's worth reading. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much, Brian, for taking the time.
Thank you.
The time go anytime I talk to you, like the time literally flies by. I'm not being metaphorical. It literally just so I appreciate your time, and I look forward to getting this on for all of the MainWP users and everyone else in the WordPress world to see. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All
Have
right.
a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.